So, good morning, everyone. Welcome to just a forgiveness practice group. Forgiveness practice is really the miracle, inviting the miracle in or desiring the miracle. And the miracle in A Course in Miracles is simply a shift in perception. To me, the miracle has two parts. It has the shift in perception, but it also has the outcome. It includes an outcome. And the outcome is that from that shift in perception, I experience more love in my heart. I become more loving. I become more open and peaceful. So sometimes people will just talk about the miracle just being a shift in perception, but it's also a good reminder of why we practice forgiveness. So forgiveness is the means, is the actual practicing that we do. The miracle is also, I think it says in the Course, the miracle is the means, but it just means that it's like a vehicle. It's a thing we do, and the miracle is what happens when we practice forgiveness. And the outcome of that miracle is we experience more love and peace. So it's really nice, and we have to know, well, why? Why would we practice forgiveness? Why would we even bother? Because the outcome is for us to experience peace and more peace and happiness as we practice it. So why would we want to even bother practicing forgiveness? Because we're upset. We only have to practice forgiveness when we're not feeling joyful or happy. So if you're feeling joyful and happy and there's nothing in your awareness that you're upset about or concerned about, then you don't need to practice forgiveness. Forgiveness is only for when you're experiencing some kind of upset. So it's a practical application. So it's there because what I really love about this practical application is that when I was experiencing a lot of depression and a lot of anxiety, I didn't really feel that talking therapy helped. It might have made me more aware of what was making me upset, but it didn't shift it. So the miracle shifts your mind from fear to love. So it shifts it to love. So this is why I think I really started to love the Course. Oh, here's Annie. Because it has a practicality to it. It's a little bit like when we practice meditation. So meditation as a daily practice, you start to see the tangible results. You start to feel a quietness. But meditation can take a little bit longer in it being able to really help, because eventually what we're really getting to in true spirituality is we're really going to dissolve this thing called the I. And that's where we really want to be heading. So when we're practicing forgiveness, we may not be actually aware that we're dissolving this I that we are. But that's what is happening, because each shift in perception. So we might be upset with someone else and we have that shifted. And the practice of forgiveness here is just a recognition that if I'm upset, I must be wrong. I must have thoughts that are telling me a story that must be wrong, because if I'm upset, I have to be wrong, because truth doesn't include any upset. So that's why I have to be wrong if I'm upset. I can't be right, because in truth brings joy, happiness, and peace. So if I'm in a state other than that, my thoughts have to be wrong. But what happens for us is we think that the thoughts are true and are right, and that I am right. So the I that thinks it's right is what is created or made by the thought. The thought always has the energy that there's an I to be right. So it's the thoughts that create the idea or the concept that there's a self. And so we work on, in the Course in Miracles, we work on the beliefs, and we work in shifting those, and there's many processes to help shift it. But really what they're doing is them removing the things that make the I. So the best way you could maybe explain it is a cake is made up of ingredients. There's no such thing as a cake. The cake is the sum of the ingredients that you put in. So if you put ingredients on a table, you wouldn't say, I've got a cake. You'd have to mix them together. And as you mix together and the baking of it, you look at it and you say, I've got a cake. But it's not really a thing. It's the blending of ingredients. So you could say who I am when I say me, Cate. I'm Cate is not a thing. There's not a thing called Cate. You couldn't know Cate. You could only look and say, what are your beliefs, Cate? What do you believe? And then that would make up Cate. So Cate is like a cake. And so I'm not a real thing. I'm a sum of my beliefs. So if I had no beliefs and I had no roles or had no gender, I wouldn't be a thing. So the only way, if someone was to say, who is Cate, you would have to describe some of the things this body did, but you couldn't describe me, because I don't really have any description as such. I don't have any reality, except for, you could say, she is female, but you're just describing some body parts. And, you know, she is 57 years old, but you're just describing the length of time this body has been here in time. The actual person, where is it? If you look deeply enough, you won't be able to find a particular thing in it, in here. You can only describe the activities of the body and the beliefs about the body. So, so when we come to the cake analogy, we might say the cake is made up of flour, water, and an egg or something. Say it's got 3 ingredients. I don't cook cake, so I can't remember what's in there, right? But just say a cake is made of 3 ingredients. If you put those ingredients on the table, you don't say there's a cake. But that's what we do. We say there's a female, there's a body with female parts, there's this, that, and we call it Cate. But what we need to do to disentangle ourselves from the I is to look at the separate parts of the cake. And so we take, say, the flour, and we say, is that cake? And we say, no. And is that cake? No. So who is the cake? Where is the cake? And you might look at those ingredients on the table and say, actually, there's no cake. It's just made up of this. And if I take that flour away, what am I left with? And if I take this away, and if I take the 3 ingredients away, where's the cake? And you'll find that in yourself, you're not truly a real thing. You're made up of your beliefs. And if you put your beliefs out on paper and you undo each, if you question and inquire into each belief. So this is what the Course does, is it gets you to look at your beliefs about yourself. And being upset and having a story about your life is the biggest anchor for you to believe that you are a cake, whereas you're not. You're just that story. You're a product of the story. So it's like the butter sitting on the table saying, I'm a cake, but you're saying, no, 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 you're just the story of butter. But so so when you look at your beliefs, you say, I got hurt by my mother when I was 5. I felt victimized by my mother, and so I am upset. I feel aggrieved. So the story might arise that I should have had a better mother. I should, my life would be different if my mother had have been better. I blame my mother for this, that, and the other because she didn't do a good job. So there's a whole lot of stories running in the mind. But what happens is that story, if we go back and inquire into it and say, is that true? Would my life had been better had my mother been different? Well, I don't know. How would I know? I had a mother. I had someone. Really, is it my mother? Is it just a person in my life that we call mother? And she said things to me and I made beliefs out of them. There has to be a really deep introspection into every story that we have in our lives. The story that we're bringing from our childhood, the story that we're bringing from our teenage years, the story about, early adults, and for the ones here that are a bit older, the story that we currently have about everything in our life. Because what we don't realise is those stories are the ingredients that keep the self-concept, this idea, there's the self here. And the self is always wounded and injured and victimised. And it's really, it's just the story that's keeping us victimised. There's no victimisation without the story. If that story was to be seen as untrue, there would be no feeling unfairly treated or victimised. So it's not the actual event that happened, because lots of events happen to us. It's the stories that we tell ourselves, that we remain in, that victimise us. We're victimised by us grasping and hanging on to the story. So to be free, we have to be free of the stories. But what happens is when those stories go, it leaves us empty. So spirituality is talking about the emptiness. But when we're empty of the story, and even the story that I'm a male or a female or anything, they all have to leave. We have to say, I don't know what I am. If I'm not identifying with my body, then I can't be male or female. Who I am is not the body. So we start to go right in, and we find really there's no self-concept, nothing, because without any stories about who I am, I disappear. I can't be anything without its story. But there can be some fear in that. Well, who would I be if I didn't have my stories to tell? Well, that's where we're really wanting to go, because the ego says that would be terrible. I'd be nothing. What would I talk about? But we want to go to that place. We want to shed everything, the netty, not this, not that, not this story, not that story, not female, not my age, not anything, no, netty, not this, not that. And then we get to a place where we're just empty, and that emptiness goes into the beautiful freedom. It crosses over a little gap into this lovely free mind. So in forgiveness, we're undoing the stories and the beliefs and the roles and the concepts. We're doing it all. We may not be even aware of what we're doing. We're just doing forgiveness, but it works to free us. And we just work on it until the last story goes, till the grievance, if you can call it a grievance, but a grievance is just a story. And it doesn't matter how long it takes. But I just wanted to share a little bit to point us back why we're doing this. It's the I, it's the story of me, the idea of the self as a real true thing that can be victimized and hurt will be revealed to be the false thing, and that's where it's freedom. And what I found for me the best way to describe being free of this I or me or self-concept was there was no referencing back to a self. That stopped. So I call it free of self-referencing. In other words, my usual way of my usual life changed. My life experience changed in a big way. So what happened is when I usually went out for a day, I had the self-referencing thoughts. So it would be, oh, they're thinner than you, they're wealthier than you, they're smarter than you. So, the ego's always comparing. It constantly does this comparison, judges others to you. So what happened is the you that it was talking about, because that disappeared, there was no self-referencing. So all those thoughts dropped away. They just stopped. They just didn't happen. So when I went out, I was just meeting people. I was walking around. It's just free of that, because when the thought says, oh, they're slimmer than you, they're prettier than you, they're richer than you, they're happier, they're more together, they study the course better than you, they're more awake than you, they're smarter than you, just this constant, what it's doing is it's saying they're smarter than you. But what happens is the you that it's talking about, it doesn't exist, you see. What is it? It's the cake made up. It's talking, when it says you, it's talking about the cake. It's talking about a cake, but a cake doesn't exist, you see. So when you say, is that true? Is that person really smarter than me? We start to break down the belief that I'm not smart enough. And we say, well, what's smart? What is smart? Who judges it? Who decides who's smart and who's not? And each time we question every belief, so that's where you want to be. You want to catch those beliefs. and say, well, there's no such thing as smart because it's all arbitrary. It's like, how long is a piece of string? She's prettier than you. Well, what's pretty? Who judges that? Who's the man sitting somewhere that decides what's beautiful and what's not? Where's that person? Who decided? I know, right? So once we start to inquire into these beliefs, they fall apart. They start to fall apart. Yeah. There's no who can say what's beautiful and what's not. We're presented, we're given the media's opinion. But who's the guy in the office that says, today I'm going to make up an idea that this type of hair is beautiful, and then I'm just going to find the people that have that type of hair, plaster it all over social media, and convince you that that's beauty. But somebody came up with that. Well, why is that true? Why? Who is it? Someone just decided one day, you know? And same with fat and thin. I mean, in some countries, people that have got huge bottoms are idolised, and lots of people run out and get implants into their bottoms because that's what they've been convinced is beauty. So we have to see that we are constantly believing things that are made up, that I could just make something up today. And if I owned a big media outlet or was in charge of stuff, I could convince anyone of anything. And then that belief would be used against you because you would be lacking. It would be always that you don't have that. And we get upset over and over again by everything. That's why inquiry is such an important part. So as we say, well, what is beauty? You know, and then some people get upset because they get wrinkles. They say, well, what is a wrinkle? It's a fold in my skin. So, you know, I have folds in my skin on my palm of my hand. Well, do I rush out to get that taken out because wrinkles aren't good? No, because I've been convinced that it's got to be here on my face. That's bad. In some societies, wrinkles on faces means that you're old and wise. So people want to be old and wise. So what, would I go and put some lines on my face with a texter because I want to? Would I go to a plastic surgeon and get him to put some wrinkles in my face? It's all this wanting to do something to change my body and myself because someone else has decided something. Someone else has come up with the idea. But is it true? You have to really be so dedicated to the inquiry that everything we believe is actually just a whole lot of bollocks. It's rubbish. It's just bollocks. I actually like that word. I see Nikki laughing. And what we don't see is all these beliefs hold the eye. We don't, in some spiritual practices, they say, who does this thought appear to? Who is the I? Who am I? And you can practice that at times as part of your spiritual practice. And you might get a glimpse. You might have this moment where you go, oh my God, I'm empty because there's no cake. The cake is made up of my beliefs. So if I take away all the beliefs, the cake isn't there. I take away all the ingredients. So people are calling you cake all day. Your name is the cake, but all you're saying is you are the blending of butter, flour, and it. So you're the blending of your beliefs. That's what they're saying. Who are you? Oh, guess what? You just, rather than saying, hey guys, hi, welcome, I'm Cate, you could say, hey, I'm the blending of my belief that my mother did this to me and that I work in this job and I'm I'm the blending of all my beliefs. So that would take you a long time rather than saying, hi, I'm Cate. But that's really what you're doing. You really, who is Cate? Well, she doesn't really exist except for her beliefs and her concept about herself and body parts. So I could describe my body parts, but is that Cate? She has brown hair and brown eyes, but really? Isn't that just me describing my body? And what if my hair goes grey? Well, Cate must have been a lie then, because you said you had brown hair, now you're grey. So I see that who I am is actually changing and it's illusory. The only thing that is true about me is that I am love, and that's it. I'm formless love, I'm spirit, I'm infinite being. And you can't see that or know that except by how you're experiencing me. So anything that you make up about me is your story about me. And we make up a story about everyone we meet, and we make up so we're living in a story about ourselves and a story about everyone else. And all stories have to go. They all have to go. They're all untrue. You cannot tell me something about me that is true, 100% true, that's always going to be true. So if you say Cate's got brown hair, well, and I've got grey hair in a few years, you can't know that to be true. So that's why forgiveness is important. Forgiveness in this group is a practice of coming to see the things that I believe to be true right now may not be true. So that's why we hang on to it. That's why we practice forgiveness in a way which we say, I could be wrong. Jesus in Rules for Decision says, just come and say, look, there's a possibility I might be wrong about this. So you might even open to say, there's a possibility I'm wrong about everything I think. But you don't have to do it all in one step. You just do baby steps. And then one day you're just like, well, holy moly, is everything I think about everything not really true? It's never 100% true. It's just ideas about things. And then you can make up any story you like. You just create a whole story about yourself and live in that. You can do anything you like. You can make anything up and live in it. But the best thing is to be free of any beliefs and stories and ideas about yourself, and just come to know yourself as spirit, as free, just free. Have no opinions, because an opinion is based on a belief. Just be free of anything. Have nothing. Just be no self. That's freedom. That's why he says defenselessness is your safety. And defenselessness is having no opinion, no idea about anything. And it sounds like, the ego says, oh, you'd be really dumb if you didn't have an opinion, because opinions make you sound really smart. But in spirituality, you're smart when you have no opinions. So spirituality is like the opposite of everything in this world, the practice of it. Anyway, I'm going to stop the recording now and let's get into the sharing. Okay, so we just talked a little bit about death, or we're talking, just exploring the idea of death. And I just thought I'd bring in the Course's teaching on death. So the truth is that God, which is our true reality, so God is not a person or a thing. God is a particular formless, infinite, expansive love. And in that love is just pure joy, creating joy and peace and happiness, extending forever and forever, and it's changeless. And it's just an ecstasy of joy and peace and happiness infinitely, forever and forever, where there's not one place where infinite joy and peace moves from its infinite peace and joy. So that's God. God is an experience. It's not a thing. It's an absolute experience of being expansive love, where you're always in. Your experience is that it's just the most beautiful, infinite, expansive, spacious, vast joy and happiness and peace. So they're all joined together. So that's what God is, and that's where we are in truth. So when we talk about death as a real thing here, when we shift into this, our experience of what we call a world, which is a world is in our mind. It's not a real thing. It's actually a projection of our mind. We're sort of like, it's like a big movie screen where things are born and things die. So we feel a loss. We can feel a deep loss when seemingly someone here dies. But that's just sort of, that loss that we feel is really something in our minds that stems back to like to the tiny mad idea where we feel we lost God, where we lost that experience. So we didn't ever actually lose the experience of infinite, beautiful, holy love. We never lost it. We just lost the awareness of it. It's not gone anywhere. It's just out of awareness. So death is not really a thing as such, because when we come into bodies and the body dies, seemingly it stops working, but the Course says the body was never really alive. It's a thing that's animated, and it's in the mind. All the bodies are in the one mind. It's a whole, like the bodies on a screen at the movie cinema, they're not really there. They're projected onto it. The only way to really be free of the fear of death is to embrace the Course's full teaching that this world is nothing to do with with infinite unchanging love of God. You can't try to look at death in the world as it seems by the egoic laws and it's not worth spending any time trying to understand it or trying to decipher it. Everyone is going to, if you meet, like you said, Annie, that some people have an idea that when I die, I just die. Nothing happens. And in truth, they're right, because nothing does happen. But each aspect of the ego that's in the dream will wake up and has already woken up to its true reality. And Jesus says in the Course that death is actually really depression and anxiety. It's like we're already dead when we're not living. So life is if we think of life as a beating heart and death as a heart that stopped. We look at an organ in the body and we say, oh, when that heart is pumping blood around, that's life. And when the heart stops beating the blood around, that's death. So we talk about life and death in terms of what a body does. But Jesus talks about the mind being life and death, what's going on in the mind. So he says that death is, you're really dead when you're in anxiety, depression, and, basically in the ego. And life, which is joy and happiness, is being alive. So I really like those distinctions there, that we are really dead. We're not living. We're not full of life when we're not in joy. And so if someone close to you seemingly dies, if you can think of them, if you can remember them, then they haven't gone anywhere. They're still in your mind. You can still have a conversation with them and laugh with them and enjoy them in your mind. You can have that relationship. And so they haven't gone anywhere. And yeah, I think that's really there's not much more for me to say on that. I think I've sort of said it. We have to see that if I'm never in a body, then I can't be born or die. I'm in God's I'm in the mind of God. we call it mind and we call it God because we're trying to give it words to the experience of an infinite, expansive love where we've always been. We've forgotten. We've just lost the awareness of it. That's all. And that awareness will come back. And then what it does is it brings us to an experience of this experience of God, which is love, infinite love and joy. And that's really just what an awakening is. It's just getting back the awareness of where we really are. And then in that awareness, there's also an awareness that we never left, that the whole time we thought with the ego actually never happened. It all disappears and we have no memory of ever being in the ego when we experience ourselves in that infinite love again. And then what can happen, or what does happen, is the body is just then not really cared. No, we don't relate to ourselves as the body parts, because the body is just made up of skin and hair and eyeballs and liver and toenails and, hair follicles and stuff like that. We don't associate that Cate is the hair or the body or the fingers. We know ourselves as, we're identifying as infinite love. And then the body is just, okay, well, this is the body. It's just going to be used to speak through. And I'm just having the experience. This is just not the body. So Nikki, I'm just going to read what Nikki's written because this is a really wonderful thing to remember. Death is a thought that takes on many forms: sadness, fear, anxiety, doubt, anger, faithlessness, lack of trust, concern for bodies, envy, and all forms in which the wish to be as you are not may come to tempt you. So it's important to remember that that's death. That's what death is, the opposite of joy and life. So it's all those identifying as a body is death. So the words death and life get changed. So we're not associating death and life as something in the body. We're identifying it where it is. So if you're fearful of death, you should be fearful of identifying as a body. So it's good. I think it's just important to know that you cannot be apart from your creator, from God, from love, from infinite love. As much as we experience ourselves as being apart from that, there's part of our mind that is still there. It's just out of awareness. All we need to do is just shift our awareness back to it. Just say, look, I invite infinite love to be my experience. I'll just shift there. I'll just ask for it. Just remove all the blocks to the experience of an all-encompassing love. It's funny to think that we're scared of an all-encompassing love. You know, really that's what we're saying. And Jesus says we're scared of love. It's just saying, oh, wow, you know, imagine having experience of beautiful love, you know, pure, infinite love. And then to say, oh, I'm scared of that. I mean, yeah, that's really what we're saying. Did you have any more questions about that, Annie? Okay, I'm going to turn the recording off now and we'll have our 10 minutes of silence. Thanks, everyone.